tak gonon boy dum Bani gono han sa tu li bud bani gono maton wadag na dud dela lo mon ge abanu gono sati fun lam lo nai gono sati fun lam lo nai gono sa tun lam lo nai gono mu lo na lam lo nai gono sa
ng iyong salita. Hinati mo ang liwanag at ang dilim. Pag-ibig mo'y damang-dama sa bawat ihip ng hangin. Ang lahat ng iyong mga biyaya, ang lahat ng iyong papapala. Salamat sa pag-ibig mo, naging sa buhay ko ito, pangakong iingatan ko ang biyaya. Hayaan mong magugay sa iyo ang mga naglalakihang alon. Pakinggan mo aking papuri, kasabay ng huni ng mga ibon. Kapangyarihan mo'y tanglaw ng buong mundo, kaya't lahat ng nilalang ay sasampa sa pangalan mo. Ang lahat ng iyong mga biyaya, ang lahat ng iyong papapala. Salamat sa pag-ibig mo, maging sa buhay ko ito, pangakong iingatan
Kilala ko ang mga tradisyonal na karapatan ng mga tagapag-alaga at mga ninunong ng lupa kung saan ako nagtatrabaho at nakatira at nagbibigay galang sa mga katutubong nakatatanda sa nakaraan at kasalukuyan.
Siya ng corruption. Kaya dapat, kaya pinag-duplicate ko para alin ang mali yung ginawa ko.
Acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the traditional rights and ancestral domains of the land on which I work and live, and give respect to the cultural community elders, both past and present.
Corruption, kaya kahit meron ng kalawang, kaya kahit na i-cover siya ng all, di ba? Then mag-ano kayo magkakaroon kayo ng corruption.
Cultural education enables us to reflect upon our own culture, the culture of others, and culture in general. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tanya Lopez, and I am your host for today. Welcome to Pamana ng Sining at Kultura, Culture and Arts Education in the Philippines. Today's session is the first of a two-part special webinar that provides a forum to experience and expand the intersections of practices in culture and arts education in the country. This webinar is organized by the Asian Institute of Maritime Studies, the Artists Welfare Project Incorporated, in partnership with the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. To give the opening remarks, let us welcome the President of the Asian Institute of Maritime Studies, Dr. Arlene Abuid Madranga.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all. With special mention for our keynote speaker, Dr. Vicente Handa, and together with, of course, Ms. Dailin Miranda Enriquez and Ms. Apple Almirante. Yes, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. ALP, AIMS, and National and NCCA has joined forces to bring you this much-needed forum. A forum for the improvement, enrichment, or sharing of best practices to arts education for an effective delivery, impact, and engagement. There is technology and science to arts education. Let's all learn them together to expand our knowledge and spread awareness until arts goes back to the mainstream curriculum in humanizing any field of study. Welcome po at magandang umaga muli sa lahat, AIMS family, ALP family, NCCA family, and sa lahat ng mga Pilipino. Magandang umaga po.
Maraming salamat, Dr. Padaranga. Today, we are privileged to listen to three practitioners of cultural education in our country. To introduce our keynote speaker who will talk about his work on culture-based education research, connecting theory to practice, let us now welcome the Assistant Dean of the School of Graduate Studies, Dr. Anami Salencio.
Dalawa. Anim. Kanina, 8 kayo eh. 2 na nawala. Ayan. Sino naman?
Dr. Salencio, may we request you please to turn on your audio? You don't have any sound po.
PhD in science education with emphasis on the socio-cultural dimension of science education at the University of Georgia. Under the use thesis of Fulbright Scholarship of the U.S. Department of State. He was a fellow of the Asian Public Intellectual Fellowship Program of the Nippon Foundation, which afforded with him to study the indigenization and hybridization of science curriculum in Thailand and Japan. He has, of course, published scholarly papers in international refereed journals. Some of those are indexed in the Web of Science and has presented over 70 papers in the international, national, and local research conferences in the Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia, Japan, and the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Vicente C. Henda.
Okay, magandang umaga sa lahat. Thank you so much, Dr. Arvin Paderanga, President of Asian Institute of Marine Studies, Dean Rob Hayden, faculty members, members of the administration, staff, students of the Asian Institute of Maritime Studies. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Thank you very much for inviting us in your Pamana ng Sining at Kultura, Culture and Arts Education in the Philippines, and together with my colleagues, together with my former students at the West Visayas State University in their master's program. We have Miss Dailin Enriquez and Miss Apple Almirante, who will be sharing with us the research studies. I'll be presenting this morning my talk entitled Culture-Based Education and Research, Connecting the Theory to Practice. Allow me to share my PowerPoint. Okay. So as I said, the title of my presentation is Culture-Based Education and Research, Connecting the Theory to Practice. I always keep in mind on whatever we will be talking here, we should be connecting them to how we do it at NCCA, as well as in our classroom practices. So overview, I'll be talking about, first and foremost, I would like to introduce to you the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. In particular, I'll be talking specifically of the subcommission where I belong, the subcommission in cultural dissemination, and the National Committee on Cultural Education. And then I'll be talking about culture and culture-based education and what are its theoretical as well as legal underpinnings. And then I'll be sharing with you our practice of connecting the theory to research and teaching. And that is where Ms. Enriquez and Ms. Almirante will come in. So the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, I would like to introduce to you the National Committee on Cultural Education as well as the Subcommission on Cultural Dissemination. The NCCA was created via Republic Act number 7556 in April 3, 1992, an act creating the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, establishing a National Endowment Fund for Culture and the Arts, otherwise known as NEFCA, and for other purposes. So this is the major mandate of NCCA, to encourage the continuing and balanced development of pluralistic culture by the people themselves, to conserve, promote and protect the nation's historical and cultural heritage, to ensure the widest dissemination of artistic and cultural products among the greatest number of people across the country and overseas for their appreciation and enjoyment, to preserve the integrity, to preserve and integrate the traditional culture and its various creative expressions as a dynamic part of national cultural mainstream, and to ensure that standards of excellence are pursued in programs and activities implementing policies herein stated. It shall encourage and support continuing discussion and debate through symposia, workshops, publications, and the highest norms available in the matrix of Philippine cultures. In other words, culture and culture-based education are most especially on its dissemination and perpetuation is within the mandate of the National Commission for Culture and Arts. So I would like to share with you what comprises the commission. It is headed by the board. It is headed by the board of commissioners, specifically by the chair. And the board of commissioners is comprised of two representatives coming from the legislative leaders from the Senate and the Congress. We have 6 government ex officio members, and these are the heads of the National Museum of the Philippines, the Cultural Center of the Philippines, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, the National Library of the Philippines, the Commissions of Wikang Filipino, and the National Archives of the Philippines. So their chair or their executive director or president of these cultural agencies sit as members of the Board of Commissioners of NCCA. Then we have 4 subcommission heads, and then these subcommission heads are elected all over the country from among the national committee heads. Then we have a representative of the Department of Education at the moment. This is represented by Commissioner Annalyn Sevilla. And we have a representative from the Department of Tourism, and then the NCCA Executive Director. So from among the Board of Commissioners, the chairperson is elected. And of course, we have the office of the chairperson, the NEFCA or the office of the comptroller, the legal service, and the international affairs. As I said, the chairperson of the commission is elected from among the 15 board members of the commissioners. So I would like to introduce to you the 4 NCCA subcommissions where the Filipinos in general might be able to join and make themselves available for different positions as heads or members of the Executive Council. So the 4 subcommissions are the following: the Subcommission on the Arts, the Subcommission on Cultural Heritage, the Subcommission on Cultural Communities and Traditional Arts, and the Subcommission on Cultural Dissemination. Under the Subcommission of the Arts, the current head is Commissioner Dr. Roland Tolentino. And under this, we have 7 national committees: the National Committee on Culture and on Architecture and Allied Arts, Cinema, Dance, Dramatic Arts, Literary Arts, Music, and Visual Arts. The next subcommission is the Subcommission on Cultural Heritage. The current head is Commissioner Architect Michael Manalo, who was elected from among 6 national committee heads on archives, art galleries, historical research, libraries and information services, monuments and sites, and museums. Next is Subcommission on Cultural Communities and Traditional Arts. The current head is Commissioner Abubakar M. Datumano. Dr. Datumano was elected from among 3 national committees under SCCTA, and these are the National Committees on Northern Cultural Communities, the National Committee on Central Cultural Communities, and the Southern Cultural Communities. The next subcommission is the subcommission on cultural dissemination. This is where I belong, where I serve as the commissioner of the subcommission on cultural dissemination. I was elected from among 3 national committees, and these are the National Committee on Communication, the National Committee on Cultural Education, and the National Committee on Language and Translation. So if you're going to look at the organizational chart of NCCA, the Board of Commissioners are there on the top, and then under them, under the Board of Commissioners, of course, the Secretariat is responsible for the managing of the daily affairs of NCCA. Under the Board of Commissioners are the heads of the 19 national committees who are also members of the National Advisory Board. And we have here the 4 subcommissions and the different national committees under each subcommission. So in other words, NCCA is mandated to promote and perpetuate the culture and the arts of the Filipinos. Ito yung sinasabi natin, ano ang pamana natin sa mga Filipinos? Ano ang naipamana natin at ano ang pwede nating ipamana sa succeeding generation? And it so happened that NCCA plays a major role in this kind of promotion and dissemination as well as perpetuation of the culture and the arts of the Filipinos. So that's why I think it's necessary for me to discuss to you the very basic concept of culture and culture-based education. So what do we mean by culture? If you look at this, kindly look at this figure flashed on your screen. We have here Paul Heibert's model of what a culture is. And if you look at the top, you can see their cultural products, patterns of behaviors, signs, rituals. These things that we can see on the sensory level, yung makikita natin. And usually, most often, ito ang una nating mapuna when we are, for example, conscious of what the culture is of a particular group. So from our senses, we can see many things that might represent the culture of the people, like cultural products or possibly patterns of behaviors, rituals ng mga tao, bahay nila, pananamit, laro, pagkain. These are things that we can see that appeals to our senses, which can be easily seen when we would like to study the culture of a particular group. But of course, we know that these are only sinasabi natin on top of the iceberg, so to speak. Okay, because culture is not only those that we can see, but there are more under it. There are more than what we can see on the surface, which are part also of the culture of the Filipino or the culture of certain community in particular. So these are what we call, some of them are explicitly stated, most especially when we would like to talk and engage in conversation with them, or we will be conducting an interview or focus group discussions or tool of research. This explicit part of this belief system can be explicitly stated. Ito ay hindi natin madaling makita, but we can draw their belief system if we are going to do some kind of, for example, formal and informal study or interaction with these people in a community. So the belief system can be explicitly drawn from the people. However, under it, and sometimes these are implied, we can see certain themes, categories, logics, as well as epistemology and probably philosophy, their metaphysics, their axiology, among others, patterns that we can see from their belief system and from their behavior, signs, rituals, among others. So all of this, if we are going to study what we call culture, napakalalim ng ibig sabihin ng kultura. Hindi lang siya something na makikita natin. Sometimes we have the impression that culture is only those that we can see, like for example, in the dance form, or Kaya sa awit, sa sayaw, okay, sa pananalita ng mga tao. But remember that culture, those things that you can see are only part and parcel of the deeper understanding of the culture of the people. That is, if you'd like to study deeper them as a cultural group. Okay. So ang aking tanong naman, most especially for us, and I usually ask this even in us in the committee who are making policies for the country. Sabi ko, what is our approach to culture, most especially kasi connected ito sa education eh. Ano ba ang saan ba tayo sa mga modelo ng kultura na ito? Saan tayo most attuned with? Kasi in the literature, we can see the two model of what the culture is, yung sinasabi nilang salad bowl model. So when we say salad bowl, you can see, like for example, we are going to take the Philippines as a country and as an object of our study. Ano ba ang kultura? Paano natin i-approach kung mag-study tayo ng kultura? At ating ituturo ito when we come up with policies for the country. Ano bang ating approach? Tinitingnan, we pay attention more on for example, in the salad bowl model, we would like to maintain and celebrate the individual culture or individual integrity of the multicultural Filipinos. So in other words, ano bang ating approach when we are educating the Filipinos? Shall we pay attention more on celebrating the diverse Filipino cultures without much in our mind the agenda of teaching them to have what we call common Filipino culture. So in other words, in the salad bowl model, we celebrate the integrity and of the diverse Filipino culture without that, how would I say, walang masyadong attempt na i-change natin yan. Kung di, let them exist, provide opportunities by which they can celebrate their own culture without much attempt to changing them. Or ito namang sa kabila, melting pot model. Okay, ito ba ang ating approach in cultural education? Now we have to come up with what we call national culture. Paghalo-haloin natin ang diverse culture para makabuo tayo ng tinatawag nating national identity or national culture na pinagsama-sama ng lahat ng kultura ng Pilipinas. And in here, we do not pay attention much on the celebration of the individual integrity of a culture, but rather more of a national culture that is a combination of various cultures. So malaki ang implication nito in terms of educating the Filipinos. Ipipilit ba natin ang national culture to a diverse cultural minority groups in the country? Or shall we will just allow them to exist and in fact support and help them to celebrate their own culture without that subtle agenda of Filipinizing them, so to speak. I'm trying to quote unquote that because we sometimes have some kind of attempt to in a way change them to become more of what we call our concept of what we call a national Filipino. So ito ba ang ating gusto as far as cultural education is concerned? So this is something that we should reflect. And I don't want to give answers in here because this will require plenty of reflection and discussions as far as the goal of cultural education in the country is concerned. So balik muna tayo sa konsepto ng kultura. Sinasabi nating culture is a system and symbol without which it would be unworkable monstrosity. Yes, hello. Hello. Okay. So culture is a system of significant symbols. So when we say significant symbols, Ano ba ang sinasabi nating mga significant symbols? Of course, symbols that we'll use to survive, right? So, of course, one of those is, of course, our language. Our language. Because we are using language is a symbol by which we communicate to others. And so if we understand the meaning of words, phrases, and sentences that we are talking in one way or another, we have what we call shared significant symbols, magkakaintindihan tayo. Dahil kung wala tayong kultura, actually, under the significant symbols, this is not only language to speak, but everything that we have, lahat na pinaghugutan natin to make sense of ourselves and to make sense of others, all these things are being drawn on our culture. Lahat, lahat. Hindi lang sa pananalita, lahat ng kahit ang ating pag-iisip, kahit ang ating meaning na create, ang ating pag-iisip, lahat ito ay galing sa kultura. So in other words, kung walang kultura, who are we? We are what we call unworkable monstrosities. Wala tayo kung walang kultura. Paano mo i-make sense ang iyong self? Paano ka mag-communicate with others? How would you come up with a shared meaning with others? Of course, you cannot exist alone in this world. In one way or another, you might say, well, there are some people who have like existed for most of their life alone. But in one way or another, they need some kind of meaning in the way they live their life. So most likely, kung ano man ang pinaghugutan nila ng meaning, ang mga pangalan na ginagamit nila, for example, for trees, for flowers, for plants, okay, and others, all of this are meanings na hindi nila create alone, but rather meanings that were transferred to them by their ancestors, by their parents, by the members of their community, okay? Most especially by the members of their family that person closely interacted with. And so when that person was born, we know that, well, we might thought na parang blank slate siya, no? Pero alam natin na slowly ang mga tao sa paligid niya ay nagturo sa batang ito on things around him, even on the use of words to label certain objects in the world. So in other words, the person become a basket by which other meanings are transferred to that person by the people around him. At yan ay sinasabi natin product din ng culture. So in other words, without the culture, we are nothing, because we'll not be able to communicate, will not be able to say words appropriate for the objects in the world around us. So with culture, everything that we have in here are called publicly available system of intelligibility. All of these were inherited from our ancestors, transferred from one generation to another. Of course, in our personal individual life, these persons have influenced us, who we are. We are a product of culture, and probably right now you might be able to recall who are these people who have shaped you. So probably it start off with your members of the family. Okay, sila ang nagbigay sa iyo ng kaalaman, ng salita, ng meaning, ng maliit ka pa. Okay, members of the family, then this expanded to the members of the community. And when you go to school, of course, your teachers will begin to influence you and give you a lot of meanings as well. And when you interact with your classmates, the same. And then when you grow older, of course, you go to the church, and then you grow older, you study some more, you get your high school education, you get your college education, and eventually work in probably in a different place where you You were born, and then some others might be lucky, they will go abroad probably. And so their culture has expanded, have expanded. So that's why, as I said, ang kultura ay pinamana sa atin. And we cannot get out from it. We cannot get out from these influences because everything that we have and even the meaning that we have are all given to us by the culture that influence us. So that's why culture is a complexes of concrete behavior patterns, including na dito ang customs, usages, traditions, habits. Kasi the others, okay, the people that we interacted with, most especially in a particular culture that we come from, okay, culture creates patterns. These are what we call shared meaning, okay, that is being transferred to us, and culture that shape us. So the outcome of this is our behavior, our behavior. So culture is a set of control mechanisms. So ito ang gusto ko emphasize kasi take note na ang kultura din, hindi tayo actually malaya, so to speak, malaya in a fullness of a term, because as a person, our culture has influenced us and provided certain mechanisms na nagsasabi sa atin na tama yan, hindi yan. So the set of control mechanisms are called plans, recipes, rules, instructions. Nagsasabing pwede ito, hindi ito, huwag kang ganyan. Okay? Kasi hindi the culture will tell us the do's and don'ts that will govern our behavior. So therefore, we can see that culture is like a closed system. So it imprisons us. It tells us what to do. And you are lucky if your experience have expanded you a little bit. Ano kaya kung you were born in a community na nandyan ka lang sa isang barangay, or sa isang town, and you were not able to get out from there for the rest of your life. Okay? So when we get education and we read books, so when we travel, then we expand our prison cells, so to speak. Na, okay. Ito ang iba na nagkikritik ng culture na nagsasabi na ito ang restricted and oppressive aspect of our cultural inheritance. And of course, one way to expand this prison cell is to educate ourselves, to learn other cultures, to travel, to read books, and in that way, ang iyong mapaghuhugutan, something where you can draw upon in sense-making process, will no longer be constricted to a stereotypical culture that has shaped you when you are still young. So kung gusto mo ma-expand ang iyong prison cell, I think you have to educate yourself, travel, and read a lot. So culture has both social and public phase. The publicly available system of intelligibility precedes us. Di ba sinabi ko kanina, nang wala pa tayo sa mundong ito, when we were still not born, we know that there is a culture already. And when we are born, the culture will tell us what to do. It will provide us a system of public intelligibility. Nauna siya. Tayo ang nagla-learn sa kultura where we are born. Okay? And we inhabit this pre-existing system. And then once we are born, we inhabit this, and to be inhabited by it because the culture will shape us. They are already in the community when one is born and remain in circulation with some changes when an individual dies. Okay, so kung mawala tayo sa mundo, ang tanong ngayon sa iyo, ano ang na-contribute mo sa iyong kultura? Ano ang na-contribute mo sa iyong kultura? Were you simply a receiver of the cultural inheritance given to you by others? Or you were a proactive person who tried in a little way, do something to produce a little change in the culture that impersons us? Okay, these are the questions that I would like to ask with respect to culture. So culture usually refers to group ways of thinking and living, At the most specific level, it is a group's decision designed for living. I said this earlier, which includes the shared knowledge, consciousness, values, skills, expressive forms, social institutions, and behavior that enable their survival as a people. Culture shapes mind. It provides us with a toolkit by which we construct not only our world, but our construction of ourselves and our powers. So yan ang sinabi kong ang meaning natin, ang construction natin inside the individual meaning-making process of a person still draws from the culture that shape us. Okay. So culture is the framework for organizing the world and our position in it. It is a set of principles that locate and orient human beings within their existing reality. Ang kultura ay isang sistema ng kaalaman at pag-unawa tungkol sa ating sarili at kapaligiran. I think I told this earlier. The whole complex of distinctive spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features that characterize a society or social group. It includes not only the arts and letters, but all modes of life, the fundamental rights of the human being, value systems, traditions, and beliefs. Ang kultura ay nagbibigay ng pagkakakilanlan. Ang kultura ay isang karapatan. It is a right of a child to be born in a culture. It is a given right. Given na yan when you are born in this world. You are born already in a culture that will shape you. Ang kultura ay ang minananggaling at dangal ng isang pamayanan. So the culture we are born in is a product already of an inheritance coming from our ancestors, given to the culture where you are born with. So ito ay minananggaling. Okay. Dangal ng isang pamayanan. Dangal dahil I think we should be proud of the culture we were born with. Regardless kung saang kultura ka man. Ito ay galing sa ating mga ninuno at ito ay dapat pangalagaan at dapat ikararangal ng isang tao. So I would like to share with you the meaning of culture-based education. Ito naman ay pagtuturo na eh. Paano tayo magtuturo ng culture-based education? It is the grounding of teaching and learning in the values, norms, knowledge, beliefs, practices, and language that are foundation of a particular culture. So what I mean here is, ano ba ang kultura? Saan galing ang isang bata? Ano ang kanyang kultura? What if when we teach something, what if we are going to draw that on the culture where a person is born with? First and foremost, why do you have to learn in school certain knowledge na hindi naman galing sa kanyang kultura? I think when we say culture-based education here, we should pay attention to the culture where our students coming from. And if we are engaged in teaching the national curriculum to our students, we should not only implement this national curriculum blindly, but rather connect this national curriculum to the culture of the students that you are teaching. In that way, you are doing culture-based education. Ito ang legal foundations ng ating culture-based education in the country. Of course, we have the national constitution. It's ingrained in the national constitution that the state shall conserve, promote, and popularize the national culture, the nation's cultural and historical heritage and resources. It is also found in the Republic Act 7356, the law creating the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, as well as the Republic Act 9155, the governance of basic education. Nasa basic education natin, like in Republic Act 7160, the local government code, the local government units shall ensure and support, among other things, the preservation and enrichment of culture. Republic Act 10,066, the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009, the Republic Act 10,533, or the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013, and its implementing rules and regulations, or RR, on the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2017. Okay, so what are these? I would like to highlight this important standards and principles under the Republic Act that I have mentioned. The curriculum shall be learner-centered, inclusive, and culturally appropriate. The curriculum shall be relevant, responsive, and research-based. So take note, the curriculum shall be gender and culture sensitive. The curriculum shall be contextualized and globalized. Okay, so if you've noticed, napakaganda ng adhikain ng ating national curriculum. Very beautifully worded standards and principles. Ang aking tanong is this, do we enact this in our classrooms? Okay, do we create or do we teach a curriculum or our subjects na learner-centered, inclusive, and developmentally appropriate? Do we teach a culture-sensitive subject matter when we are teaching the subjects that we are teaching? So another one, the curriculum shall use pedagogical approaches that are constructivist, inquiry-based, reflective, collaborative, and interpretive. The curriculum shall adhere to the principles and framework of mother tongue-based multilingual education, MTB-MLE, which starts from where the learners are and from what they already know, proceeding from the known to the unknown. Instructional materials and capable teachers to implement the MTB-MLE curriculum shall be available. For this purpose, the MTB-MLE refers to formal or non-formal education in which the learner's mother tongue and additional languages are used in the classroom. The curriculum shall use the spiral progression approach to ensure mastery of knowledge and skills after each level. And the curriculum shall be flexible enough to enable the schools to localize, indigenize, and enhance the same perspective, educational, and social context. So what's the national curriculum for culture-based education? Kinuha ko ito sa PSEP, ano? This is the NCCA's Philippine Cultural Education Conceptual Framework. So culture is at the center, and then we have cultural knowledge, and then we should teach cultural knowledge. We teach our culture through culture-based pedagogy and cultural education that is anti-disciplinary, transdisciplinary, and disciplinary in order to create a nation of critically informed and empowered Filipinos. So ito ang framework ng PSEP or Philippine Cultural Education Program of NCCA. I-zoom ko ang nasa center kasi itong, I find this very interesting and important. Our goal is to produce critically informed and culturally literate and empowered Filipinos that contextualize knowledge based on meaningful encounter and interaction with the community, critical consciousness of Philippine history, heritage, and geography, and culturally informed choices and action for inclusive growth and sustainable development. So, what do we do now? These are the things that are mandated. May legal basis tayo. What do we do at the National Commission for Culture at NCCA, particularly in the National Committee for Cultural Education, to push the culture-based agenda education? Ito yung allow me to share briefly what we are doing at the National Committee on Cultural Education in order to perpetuate the culture-based education agenda. So as of 2021, and I am sharing to you, actually, second term ko ngayon sa NCCA, I start sa National Committee on Cultural Education. I started off in 2017. as the secretary of the committee and executive council representative coming from Western Visayas. So naging secretary ako, medyo may access na ako sa mga information on what we are doing at NCC Ed. So in 2017 up to 2021, we have implemented a total of 26 projects all over the country. 10 in 2017, 4 in 2018, 5 in 2019, 4 in 2020, and 3 in 2021. At ito ang representation ng mga projects across the country. Madami ang Region 4, very active ang Region 4 in terms of getting funds, proposing projects at the NCC-Ed. Region 3, medyo Region 7 too. Kaunti lang sa Visayas, kaunti lang sa Visayas ang nakuha ng funds from the national from the NCC-Ed. Okay. These are competitive grants. So in 2017 to 2019, ito ang category ng mga projects na implement ng aming komite. 1 for competition, 5 for research, 4 for capability building, ICH Intangible Cultural Heritage Education Program. We have two, so we have 4, and Hibla Kultura Filipina, we have 5. Okay. So a total of 19 projects were implemented in 2017 to 2019. Diwang fell under the category competition, and 2017 was the final year that Diwang was under the committee. It was then transferred to PSEP. So ang Diwang ngayon ay nasa Philippine Cultural Education Program ng NCCA na. Okay, in 2018 and 2019, we have called for proposals which fell under 2 programs, Hibla Kultura Filipina, or Traveling Exhibitions, and Intangible Cultural Heritage Education Program for Basic Education. So, in the Intangible Cultural Heritage Education for Basic Education, we had Pagtibong, we supported Pagtibong, the second UP Visayas International Conference on Intangible Heritage. We supported Likmuan, the Intangible Heritage Education Program for Basic Education in 2019. And in 2019, we had Durungawan sa Kulturang Filipino. It is running until now. It's a professional development program for teachers. Okay. So ang Hibla Kultura Filipina o Habi ng Luzon, isang project ito under the team Hibla Kultura Filipina 2018, Palipad Dila 2019, Putong Hibla Kultura Filipina 2019, and honoring the indigenous ancestors in 2019. So madami kaming project under the big theme Hibla Kultura. So in Hibla Kultura Filipina, this was the traveling exhibitions for Hibla Kultura Filipina, which serve as an avenue for promoting and popularizing local cultural icons. These are attempts to turn the research materials / exhibition materials into lesson exemplars. So in 2020, ito naman yung project. May Likmuan, ang NCC-Ed, Tambayayong Dabawenyo, Tunog, at saka Durungawan sa Kulturang Filipino. The Cultural Education Committee endorsed 5 projects in 2020 for funding, and out of the 5, 4 were implemented and 1 was canceled. At ang na-cancel ay ang Bulawan. The cancellation of Bulawan was initiated by the LGU proponent due to COVID-19. So ang Likmuan, ano itong Likmuan na sinasabi ko? This is the compendium of learning resources and lesson exemplars based on intangible cultural heritage. The main output of the project is a compendium of lesson exemplars adapting authentic, appropriate, and culture-based intangible cultural heritage which are aligned with the competencies of the Department of Education for Basic Education Program. Likmuan was able to research and produce 13 learning materials from intangible cultural heritage of selected areas in Luzon and Visayas. From the 13 learning materials, they were able to come up with 15 lesson exemplars for various grade levels in the basic education. A total of 18 authors were engaged in the production of the learning material, while 16 were engaged in the production of the lesson exemplars. These learning resource materials and lesson exemplars were then compiled into a paperback compendium. So ito yung mga contribution namin in the culture-based education of the country. And of course, sometimes in partnership with the Department of Education, but these are NCCA initiated project under the National Committee in Cultural Education. How about the Tunog project? What was this? The practice of communication. Tunog is the documentation of the communication sounds found in Laguna and Batangas and the production of an audiovisual presentation about these sounds. The project was able to document 4 sounds used in community communication such as kampana, budyong, balaktak, and tambuli, as well as the required audiovisual representation of the project. The research outputs have also been presented in 2 different occasions attended by approximately 60 students, teachers, researchers, and other cultural practitioners. Third is Tambayayong Dabawenyo. Ano itong project na ito? This involved the development of one accessible website featuring local culture, heritage, and identity of the Davao region. The project has encountered several setbacks in shooting the context due to COVID-19 restrictions in the area. And of course, our pet project, which has been running for so many years already, the Cultural Educators Forum, otherwise known as Makbudurungawan sa Kulturang Filipino. This is a professional development program for teachers and cultural workers all over the country. This year in 2021, it has been held in 10 regions all over the country. Okay, so Durungawan was a webinar series wherein basic and tertiary education teachers are provided with knowledge on culture-based education. Durangawan was conducted as a 3-day webinar series for 7 sessions that ran from September to October 2020. Ito ay noong 2020 ito I was talking earlier of the 2021 that we have because we expanded Durungawan all over the country na. And I hope, and as of the moment, Durungawan is still going on. Okay. It was able to engage approximately 1,140 basic education teachers and supervisors as well as other cultural workers nationwide. I'm talking here of the 2020 Durungawan. Sa ngayon, I think we reached more than 4,000 or 5,000 already. We have reached 4,000 or 5,000 already in this Durungawan sa Kulturang Filipino, or possibly more. So the Subcommission on Cultural Dissemination for 2021, this year we have been implementing Balag at Tukod, a multidisciplinary program to promote food sustainability and at the same time contextualizing education within a communal or school garden or home garden. So Linang at saka Durungawan, again, that's running now in 2020, that is running now in 2021. Okay. So for 2022, nailabas ng aming call and we have already endorsed in our last meeting these 3 projects to be implemented for next year. Again, Balag at Tukod, Panatag nga Barani, online video game app, and then the Durungawan sa Kulturang Filipino. Okay, so here is the deliverables for Balag at Tukod. Okay, it is actually a home school or community garden as a platform for learning where series of activities conducted in the garden that conforms to health protocols, and then students or proponents are expected to, or implementers are expected to develop instructional materials and lesson plans using the garden as a context for teaching certain competencies in the of that end. Okay, so online game, we will have this by next year. And then, of course, as I said, ito ang current running na programa ng NCCED. I think we are on the last of the 10-leg series, webinar series on culture-based education, and we dubbed this as Mga Durungawan sa Kulturang Filipino. I think we have as far as success is concerned, we are really doing good here in Durungawan. Most often in our Zoom webinar that runs for 3 days per region, we get a minimum of about 300 to 400 participants attending this webinar. And there was even a time that we reached the full quota of our participants. We reached 1,000 participants in one of our webinar series. So this is one indicator that this program is really working well. We have invited speakers who provide us the theory on culture-based education, and we also invited teacher practitioners who demonstrated on how to teach certain localized, indigenized, or contextualized lessons in their school, integrating the culture of the community in teaching certain concepts prescribed by the Department of Education in the national competencies. Okay, so that was the initiative of our committee, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts National Committee on Cultural Education, to promote culture-based education in the country. So how do we implement? Ito ang mga usapin sa culture-based education. How do we implement culture-based education in schools? Dahil sabi natin, napakaganda ng adikain ng curriculum as far as deep ed curriculum is concerned, found in the Republic Act that grounded the implementation of basic education. Napakaganda philosophically, theoretically napakaganda. Pero ito ang aming concern sa culture-based education, na NCC Ed, paano ba in-implement ang culture-based education sa eskwelahan, lalo na sa subject na dituro ng isang teachers? Because we might have a beautifully grounded or beautifully worded curriculum up there, but in terms of practice, baka there's something wrong with the practice. So that's why we would like to revisit, or we pay attention so much on how culture-based education is implemented in schools. As an overview, I would like to draw from the idea of Demert on his idea of culture-based education in schools. May sinasabi and curriculum, may sinasabi siyang generic curriculum, na ito ay curriculum na common to everybody. Okay? And I assume that the generic curriculum of our DepEd is the National Competency Standards. Okay, the National Competency Standards. These are designed to meet the academic needs of students all over the country without regard to culture or ethnicity. Ito ba ang tinuturo natin sa classrooms? Ito ba ang tinuturo ng mga teachers, most especially in basic education in the classroom? Even for you who are teaching in the college level, do you integrate culture-based education in your curriculum, most especially in the specific subject that you are teaching? Okay, do you allow the culture of your students, or do you use the culture of your students as do you connect, should I say, do you connect the subject matter that you are teaching to the cultural backgrounds of your students? If not, possibly you are just paying attention to the generic curriculum. And the other one is the multicultural curriculum. You design a curriculum to meet the academic and cultural needs of students with regard to the variety. Take note, in a school, in a class, of a variety of cultures, especially if you're teaching in Manila, where it is a melting pot of various students coming from different parts of the country. Variety of cultures and ethnicity in a school. Do you pay attention to this multiple backgrounds of your students in teaching the specific subject or concepts or skills in your syllabus? And the third one, culture specific, designed to meet the academic needs of specific cultural or ethnic group of the students. So these are the dilemma in the pedagogy of culture-based education, most especially in the basic education. Whose culture do we teach? Sometimes we may not pay attention to this. If we do not examine it critically, probably we are teaching somebody's culture to the students. So what dominant culture shapes the curriculum? In education, students with diverse backgrounds and cultures are often marginalized because they are exposed to a curriculum with one predominant cultural bias. It does not cater to the culture that are familiar that are exposed to the curriculum with one predominant culture. It does not cater to the culture that are familiar with and are part of. That is why it is important to create a multicultural or specific curriculum that incorporates diverse and specific perspectives of our cultural groups. How do we design teaching and learning process? Responsive, relevant, and congruent to the physical, social, and cultural preferences of our students. So whose culture are we going to teach in schools? Culture-based education means that the education system is based on the community's framework of values, priorities, and worldview, so that the path of educational development chosen to meet a community's needs is theirs, not what outsiders might choose for them. I will go back to this later on, to this important argument. We'll go back to this idea when we'll be listening later on to the presentation of Miss Enriquez and Miss Almirante. Again, culture-based education means that the education system is based on the community's framework of values, priorities, and worldviews, so that the path of educational development chosen to meet a community's needs is theirs, not what outsiders might choose for them. Okay. Hopefully, this will help in framing us or understanding the study of Miss Enriquez and Miss Almirante. So culture-based education will function to allow learners to learn from within their own culture, and function from within their own worldview and cultural values. So these are the different culture-based education strategies and theoretical framework, so to speak. So when we do research and when we are teaching, there is some kind of theories in our mind that underpin our action, whether we teach or whether we do research. And it so happened that these are already what I call as middle level theories that can be used to frame our understanding of teaching and research in culture-based education. So ginagamit natin ito sa theoretical framework ng research. At ginagamit din natin itong basihan na when we connect our teaching practices to certain theories. And I would, all of these are culture-based education, theories and strategies. Advocacy education, community-based education, concept-based education, cross-cultural education, cultural sensitivity education, culturally adaptive education, cultural sustainability education, heritage education, identity education, project-based education, multicultural education, service learning education, servant leadership education. And of course, the more advanced one, culturally relevant pedagogy. Of course, Apple's research is related to this. Culturally responsive teaching, community funds of knowledge. And I think community funds of knowledge will be mentioned to you in the presentation also of Miss Enriquez as well as Miss Apple. Okay, cultural memory banking, teaching for social justice, margin and center in education. I would like to highlight margin and center in education because this is the very specific frame where Miss Dailin Enriquez later on will be framing her research on how to create a critical pedagogy that will put the ATI students at the center of educating them. Cross-border crossing, teaching for citizenship training, hybrid space, citizen science, social scientific issues, service learning, teaching in informal setting, and community immersion. These are some of the many theoretical frameworks that we are using when we conduct research as well on culture-based education. I'll be sharing to you in a short while the titles that underpin probably one of these theories in our research. So we have here culturally responsive, culturally relevant. So I will just skip this one because probably our time is getting short na. Among the means for applying culture-based education to the K to 12 curriculum, we have Indigenous Peoples Education Framework, we have Madrasa curriculum, which is I think very indigenous way of teaching, and also we have the iPad education is also very good. There are the different levels by which you'll be able to appreciate culture-based education. The madrasas and the iPad education to me would require a deeper level of culture-based education, magandang favoring the culture of the students learning in this iPad education, in this madrasa education. So how do we implement that? Of course, in research, I'm talking this as far as research is concerned, we have the theoretical framework. Most often when you do culture-based education, we frame it on the epistemology of constructivism or constructionism, theoretical research perspective of symbolic interactionism. I wish I have time to discuss more of this as far as research is concerned, but my time is running out, so I'll just flash it quickly. The specific theories might be, we said, middle range theory is culture-based education. The specific theory is, or the grounded level theory is the community funds of knowledge, the margin and center, and these two things will be discussed to you later on as a framework by Miss Dailin and Miss Apple. Okay. So these are the examples of the research that we have done in the teacher education program in my university. At the West Visayas State University, I also did my dissertation related to culture-based education. And also I share this advocacy of teaching our students by integrating culture-based education in the curriculum. Okay. And in research, how would I say, I've created possibly several disciples already who did their master's thesis and their doctoral dissertations on culture-based education. So we have here Rachel Alondai's, my master's students conducted the research on culture, charcoal making community as context for culturally sensitive, relevant science education and action ethnography. Liberatory pedagogy in a place-based biology education for ATI children, which will be presented to you later on by Dailin Enriquez. Pantatan, or this is the catfish farm, as a source of funds of knowledge for culturally relevant biology education by Jerome Rodrigo in 2019. Building a community of teachers co-inquiring on social scientific issues in a place-based physics education. This was a dissertation conducted by Dr. Grace Aaron Manahiro. All of them were my advices in the master's or PhD level. Okay, bridging community, funds of knowledge, and school science through cultural memory banking, an action ethnography by Melanie Kidan Palong. Science behind football. Take note, Barotac, Nuevo, Iloilo is the football capital, and it so happened that my student, Ivy Grace Solas Araneta, lived in that town, and she wanted to create a curriculum that will draw upon the football, the culture of football in Barotac Viejo. So science behind football, basis for the development of SSI-based instructional materials for high school biology. And of course, Miss Apple Almirante will be presenting to us in a short while, Babaylan, Funds of Knowledge for Culturally Relevant Biology Education. Okay, we have Sugilanon sa Katungan, or Stories from the Mangrove. Co-inquiry on mangrove conservation knowledge and practices for culturally relevant research and instruction. And we have here, I had also social studies students, ethnography of Atis Pangayam for a video documentary for grade 7 social studies. So these are examples of research, and I think there are many more that many other students not found in this list that I have mentored, but it so happened that I like this title, so I presented here to you. And you'll be listening to of this later on how this culture-based kind of research, most especially attempts to make science relevant to the lives of cultural community students. And we have some studies related to this, related to education, as well as on culture-based education in particular. Okay, so this was my study. Siguro hindi ko na lang i-present ito kasi I've been presenting this naman in the Durungawan, but quickly, we have what we call community immersion, where our students in the past, it so happened that this curriculum was phased out already in the new curriculum, but community immersion is the context by which our students immerse themselves in the community for several days in order to learn the life of the people in the community. And this is our way of connecting pre-service teacher education to the local communities, most especially in Western Visayas, most especially in Iloilo City, and in particular, West Visayas State University. This was one of the paper I wrote, A Dialogue of Life, coming from that research project, integrating service learning in a community immersion model of pre-service science teacher education. This was published in the Journal of College Science Teaching, published by the NSTA in the US. Okay, and with my co-authors in there. So we had students learning community life, like for example in the farm, as part of their community immersion activity, tree planting as part of their service learning project in the community, teaching the local people on how to make herbal soap using local and indigenous materials found in the community as part of the service learning project of my students in the past. My students put up a mini museum or mini displays reflecting the culture of the barangay where they immerse themselves. So this is the picture of students working on their displays for the museum, community-based museum depicting the baybais, or that's the barangay's arts, crafts, and livelihood. The name baybay here is a pseudonym. Picture of students working on their museum displays depicting the marginalization experience of some baybay residents. It's more like social justice issues that they documented in the community. So plenty of service learning projects that are community-based, that are culture-based, where we frame our culture-based education for prospective science teachers. And these are the name of the service learning projects included. We did this and implemented in local communities because this curriculum ran for more than 10 years. And we conducted several studies on this program. And so that's why we had plenty of community engagement in the community as part of the service learning projects of our pre-service science teachers. These are prospective teachers studying an teacher education program with major in science. So we have community herbal garden, science literacy for pre-K children, volunteer teaching in local school. So I run this quickly. Herbal soap making workshop, the one that I showed to you earlier in the picture. Volunteer work in rural farms. Okay, if you've noticed in there, service learning, collaborate with agriculture and community officials in the conduct of a local seminar on integrated pest and weed management for corn growers. So we had tree planting activities as part of the service learning project. We have medical and dental mission. So here, the students collaborated with local health units and officials for free medical and dental checkups for barangay people, coordinated with local government on the provision of free medicines and vitamins, and conducted a deworming campaign among local school children, demonstrate to school children proper teeth care. Okay, community-based museum, the one that I showed in the picture. Actually, it's not a full-blown museum. It's just a mini museum, so to speak. But we just call it mini museum. because students were engaged in documenting community funds of knowledge relevance to science teaching and learning through interviews, focus group discussions, and participant observations, and collaborated with community people in putting up a mini museum to house the cultural, historical, and ethno-scientific practices of the community. Well and water quality testing was another service learning project. Okay, some of the pictures in there. We had also another study involving a river in the community, somewhere in Lambunao, Iloilo. We investigated river quarrying as a context to create lesson plans that are framed on socio-scientific issues. Okay, applying the lessons learned from a river in the Philippines to engage the 10 to 15-year-old in learning about water quality and ecological justice at a river. Okay, this was published study already. We have community immersion, we have the model, we have one in here. I think I will stop now. I will stop my sharing of the presentation because I would like to give the floor to our two members of the panelists who will give you, who happen to be my thesis advisees, who will share to you the research studies on how they were able to implement a culture-based education, most especially in science education, using and framing teaching from the culture of their students, using the culture of their students. Okay, so I would like to, probably they will be introduced properly by our host this morning. So I give you now the floor for the introduction, and you will be listening to the two presentations of our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Handa. We would like to inform our audience that there will be an open forum after the presentation of our panelists. We encourage you to already post or type your questions on the chat box. Now, we move on to the panel presentation. Our first panelist will share her research on Babaylan Funds of Knowledge for culturally relevant biology education. She is a teacher 3 from Kalinog National Comprehensive High School and currently finishing her Master's of Arts in Education, major in Biological Science from West Visayas State University, and currently taking Doctor of Philosophy, major in Biology at the same university. Let us welcome Ms. Appleby Almirante. Ms. Apple? May I call on Ms. Apple?
Pwede din mauna si Dailin kung ready siya, and then Apple will follow. Dailin, are you
Recording
ready?
in progress.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Dailin, would you be ready?
Okay.
Recording stopped.
Okay. We'll start with Ms. So to introduce our another speaker, she is a first place awardee of the NOSTI International Research Conference 2021. She is a graduate of Masters of Arts in Education, major in Biological Science at West Visayas State University, and presently a faculty member of Maasin NCHS Maasin Iloilo.
Good
To
morning,
present,
sorry.
let's welcome Ms. Dailin M. Enriquez.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ms. Dylan M. Enriquez, a graduate of Master of Arts in Education, major in Biological Science at West Visayas State University. La Paz, Iloilo City, and presently a faculty member of Maasin National Comprehensive High School, Maasin, Iloilo, and under the DOST SEI Scholarship Grant. Today, I'm going to present my research study on laboratory pedagogy in a place-based biology education for ATI children. I would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to my research advisor, Dr. Handa, for all the support and for the brilliant ideas he put in my research study. Laboratory education, according to Barton, is another way of teaching science education in students who are historically marginalized by the science endeavor in order to help all students value the contributions made by those silenced in science. In this study, laboratory pedagogy means teaching the participants a concept in preference to their own interests, making science education relevant to them. These ATI were the participants of my study and who were still considered marginalized in science education. ATI, as an indigenous people, represent our origin and our identity as Filipinos. They should be preserved and enriched. Unfortunately, these indigenous people remain one of the poorest, most excluded and disadvantaged sectors of our society. Their settlement remained in a far-flung area, uncivilized, illiterate, and only few attended formal schooling. The statement flashed in your screen, kung mag-eskwela kami, hasta lang kami grade 1. Why din kami nagapadayon? When we go to school, we're only up to first grade. We do not continue. This statement was said to me by one of the ATI children who passed by our house selling broomsticks in the neighborhood. This line struck me and come to think and realized why most ATI children do not continue schooling. Hence, the main purpose of this study is to deconstruct, break or collapse the margin and center dichotomy in science education. In view to the above purpose, these studies seek to answer the following questions. Number 1, how is laboratory pedagogy celebrated in a place-based biology education? In what ways the margin and center dichotomy is collapsed in a place-based laboratory pedagogy among ATI children? And what kind of biology concepts
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
I think we're having technical difficulties. Let's just wait for a moment. Miss Apple?
Hey, good morning.
Okay. Would you be ready if ever we start with you?
Sure, sir.
Okay. Okay, since Miss Dailene have we will proceed to Miss Apple Almirante presentation. So to introduce her, she will present she will share her research on Babaylan Funds of Knowledge for culturally relevant biology education. She is a teacher 3 from Kalinog National Comprehensive High School and currently finishing her Master's of Arts in Education, major in Biological Science from West Visayas State University, and currently taking Doctor of Philosophy, major in Biology at the same university. Let us all welcome Ms. Appleby Almirante.
Can I now share my screen, sir?
Yes, yes, miss.
Okay. Once again, good morning, everyone. I am Appleby Almirante from Kalinog National Comprehensive High School. I am a thesis advisee by Dr. Handa. And this study, I was inspired to explore this study because in my 3 years in teaching, I was assigned in the Mountain School of Kalinog. So Municipality of Kalinog is well known for the presence of indigenous people, for its diverse culture, traditions, belief, and practices. So one of that indigenous knowledge is about the knowledge about Babaylan. So this study was funded by the DOCSEI. So my study is about the Babaylan Funds of Knowledge for culturally relevant biology education. So this study will link us how the culture will integrate in the classroom settings. So what are my reasons for conducting this study? Since I was assigned in a mountainous school, I was observed and witnessed the problem facing by the science educations like lack of materials, lack of electricity. That's why this study will improve the public face of science educations. Also, we are approaching the Western, or we are teaching the Western concepts in our classrooms, but we cannot deny the fact that the students or our learners are still going back to what they are embedded in their daily lives that influenced by their community. So this is also a chance for the teachers to create an instructional materials which is suited to the needs of their learners. And of course, this study will promote or will advocate the contextualized lessons which can be integrated in our biology lessons. Since I am major in biology, that's why this kind of culture I integrated in the biology lessons. So thus, there is a need to document the funds of knowledge of Babaylans in order to make science relevant to the lives of students. Because when I was listening to the stories of my students, I was curious, what is this all about? What is Babaylan? Why they are talking about the practice? Okay, so who are the Babaylan? So according to Pisho 2016, they are considered as the high priestess, a doctor, a herbalist, artist, medium advisor, agriculturist, and more. And then according to Villariba 2006, those who are gifted when it comes to healing power. Of course, this is a woman, sometimes a man who served the community through his role as folk therapist. Because when we are go back to our cultural um, belief, those babaylans, they are looking up by the people in the community as the most high-ranking officials. Of course, but according to my respondents, they become babaylan because they experience a life-threatening events, and also they are what we call their calling. And of course, they are also inherit from their elders. So learning this ability is not for a short time, but this is for a long time since they are exposed. So the research questions, of course, the aim of this study is to document the funds of knowledge of babaylands associated with biology concepts. So this biology concepts will be the knowledge to teach the junior high school students. Since I was senior high school students, I chose the junior high school students curriculum because in senior high school there is what we call the first semester and the second semester. So the set of subjects are changes from 2 semesters. But unlike in the junior high schools, they are continuously. So this study will answer the following questions. So what are the funds of knowledge of babaylas related to biology? So what lesson exemplars can be prepared based on the funds of knowledge? So how these funds of knowledge are used to implement to teach the junior high school biology? So my epistemological framework is the constructivisms or constructivist, wherein the understanding and the knowledge by the learners are based on their experiences. And of course, as what Dr. Handa mentioned earlier, that symbolic interactionism, the community, the society are composed of symbols, and the people interpreted what symbols is all about. And of course, the specific theories, which is the culture-based education. So this study will be guided by this specific theories, which is all about the community funds of knowledge. And of course, the methodological research perspective. This is a collaborative output of the research team. This is not only exclusive for the researcher itself, but this is an output or collaboration of the research team that composed of me as a main researcher and the one science teacher and then the students. So this is the locale of the study. This is the only secondary school in the mountainous part of Kalinog. It is surrounded by the mountains. It is lack of electricity, lack of material. So there's a lot of problem in this school. That is why I inspired to explore this study. So what is the methodology of this study? So this is a qualitative study made use of collaborative action ethnography. So this is adapted from Frederick Erickson's 2006. So the collaborative action ethnography provides an alternative to the elitism of traditional ethnography and scientific policies-oriented research in education by allowing participants to inquire together in issues that mutually define. So this is not only the project or the study involved by one person, but this is also involved by the different people who will benefit the study. So like students, like teachers in the school. So of course, the primary participants are the three bylines. So they are selected purposefully. They are located, since the school is surrounded by the three barangays, so we pick one babaylan in each barangay. So they are assigned pseudonym for their confidentiality. And of course, the research team is composed of high school students, one science teachers, and yours truly. So the Babalan funds of knowledge, so they are the key participants. So I assign them the pseudonyms. So we have Manang Amanda, Manang Rosella, and Manang Rochi. So the community wherein Manang Amanda live. So only the motorcycle is the mode of transportation, and they are not yet concrete when it comes to road. Okay, so this picture will represent and introduced to us by Manang Amanda. And then of course, this is the pictures provided and taken by the research team. Then also this is the materials presented to us by Manang Rochi. So they are allowed us to take these pictures. So aside from the three Babaylan practitioners, we also have the secondary participants. So we have the elders in the community, the barangay officials, the people in the community, and those who are really knows about the Babaylans. So by the way, Babaylans varies names from the different places in the Philippines. But here in Kalinog, here in Panay, they are usually popular known as Manubulong. So, of course, we employ the purposive sampling. We include the formal and informal interviews. And of course, the observation, the casual conversation, so that the participants will feel or will not feel intimidated to us. So we just like act that we are just normally having a conversation with them. So these procedures have different phases. So first, the preparation phase, the documentation of Babalan funds of knowledge, the preparation of lesson exemplars, and of course, the teaching of Babalan funds of knowledge incorporated in lesson exemplars. So this is the schematic diagram wherein we we organize in the different phases. So the preparation phase. So this is the preparation phase wherein we identify the participants. We do the focus group discussion to talk about what is the understanding of island concepts. So what are the methodology? What are the framework of the study? And of course, what we gonna do to document the funds of knowledge in the community. So after the preparation phase, we have now in that second phase, which is the documentation of avalanche funds of knowledge. Of course, we are visiting the community to establish the rapport to the people or to the participants. And of course, after that building a rapport to the participants, we do now that interview proper. So aside from interview, we do the observation. So later I will going to show some of the actual practices that the research team witnessed during their rituals. So we have ongoing data collections. So we have the field observations. Of course, there is a calculation synthesis of the significant learning experiences of the research team. So after that, we now prepare the lesson exemplars. So this will involve the students, the teacher, and yours truly. So in lesson exemplars, so synthesis of the research data gathered and the researchers' experiences, and of course, drafting a lesson exemplars. Then after that, after the checking, after the giving of feedbacks by the department heads of the science department, we are now ready to implement the lesson exemplars. So we are now teaching about and funds of knowledge. So after I am the one who demonstrate the lessons, and after that, I'll give the feedbacking form for the teachers and the students to expose in the lesson exemplars. And after that, after the observations, we also invite babaylans to confirm their concepts. That it is true that the concepts are coming from them and we are only implementing in the school setup. So after that, after the checking and final checking and the acknowledging the recommendations, we are now in the finalization of lesson exemplars. So what are the babaylan practices that we gathered from our respondents? So these are the summary, but I will going to discuss one by one. So the Kultura, this is the ritual which the babaylans offer food like different varieties of rice, sticky foods, chickens or pigs to the spirits who cause illness to the patient. So it is performed by producing noise by banging the agong to call on the spirit. So every banging of agong is followed by chanting of the babaylans using their local language in the dancing around the offering. So this is the picture of the whole feast that offered during the rituals. And after that, this is also the video was taken by the research team during the rituals, but I think I don't need to play the video since it takes time. Okay. See, this is the place has no electricity and only the lampara or the TV is the source of their light during night. So aside from that, aside from Pagubra, we have the Pasilaw and Pamuya. So they are using the ginger to diagnose the illness of the patient. They are what we call this as patibara in their local term. So they are also, I was also observed on notice that they are just like a doctor that they are asking what is the illness of the or the causes of the illness of the patient. Then after that, they will recommend some of the things or process that they need to do so that they will be able to heal. So they are also called the pasilaw. This process is pasilaw. And the pamuya is the use of the ginger. So the whole process will be called the pasilaw. And the good thing about this, they are not asking or they're not requiring big amount. It's just an voluntary amount that can offer by the patient. Aside from that, we have the Pamana. So as a summary, This is the process or the practice of the Babaylans. During the Good Friday, they all go in the part of the forest wherein it is rich in diversity, and they are gathered there, sangka for their lanahan or lanahan. And of course, the unique of this lana is they are mixing up virgin coconut oil. So according to the elders and according to the Babaylans, if you have no ability to make lana, you cannot produce the virgin. Aside from that, we have the pangdong, panghilot, and panghampol. So I put it as mine since the concept is still the same. So the practice is done by the babaylan to the patient illness, accompanied by the panghilot, or where the pulse of the patient is felt to determine if there is possible the tibet or injury. The herbal plants or the leaves of the plants, they are used as harmful for medication. And they are used as dana as baranis. So aside from that, we have the Pamana. Actually, this is a ritual done after the construction of the new house to give peace to the people who would live there. So until this time, actually, they are still practicing this. And aside from that, we have Panulog-Tulog and Matpo. We are lucky to access this picture since the time we ask or we interview them, that's the time also after harvesting their malido or the species of rice. So they are offering the malido to appease the spirit, their tuba, and we have also the batak duman. So this ritual used by the babaylan for the children who are weak when it comes to they are most of the time they're experiencing illness. And then of course the padugo, of course this is applicable after the construction of the house. They are putting the smearing the blood and putting cross all around the house to live and to appease if there is a spirit that can harm people in the community. So after those getting of the different Babaylan practices, we are now on the part wherein we integrate what Babaylan practices has biology concepts. So this is the summary table. So this is the Babaylan practice. We have the Pangluya, we have the Pangpangalap, and what are the science discipline involved in these practices. So in this another column, we have the science curriculum gathered from the Department of Education. So we have the topics, digestion, ecosystem, the content. So we get this from their curriculum guide. So we have also the Panulod-Tulod and Pangpang-Ubra. We have the Pangpang-Hampol, Panghilot, and then the chanting. So after that, in the lesson exemplar, biology concepts can be taught using Babaylan funds of knowledge and practices, then integrated in the lesson in the form of differentiated activities. So based on the result, more of the Babaylan concepts can be integrated in the field of biology and other science such general science and chemistry. Since spiral progression po yung approach ng curriculum, yung first quarter ng biology ng junior high schools, they are focusing on the earth science. Then for the second quarter, they are on chemistry. Then the third quarter, biology, and the fourth quarter is more on the physics. So this is the example of lesson exemplar. So I also indicate the hyperlink for this. This is the format from the Department of Education. This is a simple format since I am already more than 3 years. So this format required for us to do this. So I made the 2 lesson plans. Gumawa po ako ng lesson plans, 2 lesson plans, because the 2 remaining topics that has Babaylan concepts is still in the 4th quarter. So during my demonstrations, their topic, the quarter is in their 4th quarter na. So just not to interrupt the learning and the flow of learning of the students, dalawang po yung demonstrate ko po sa class. Since the other topics are already done in their previous quarters. So this is during my demonstration. So I provide them that feedback form, and then of course the observation from the science department head and then the science teacher. Okay, for the conclusions and recommendations. So there are relevant biology concepts in the Babaylan practices. So the practices are indigenous, common, and known to the people in that community, and this can be integrated as part of the learning experience of students to make teaching more relevant. And not all practices of Babaylans can be used to teach biology, since other Babaylan parts of knowledge are too much for high school learners to explain its relation. And it needs deeper understanding the connection of the concepts. Moreover, other Babaylan concepts are more related to other sciences such as physical science and chemistry. So the lesson exemplar from the points of knowledge gathered was used holding a junior high school biology class. So implementation using a variety of approach. So this approach included negotiated activities, comparison, role-playing, games, reflections, using concepts and practices as examples. So this is the recommendations. Curriculum makers should initiate and implement programs to promote contextualized biology lessons and flexible competencies and performance for the students. And it's also the promotion of indigenous concept knowledge. And of course, the school should actively be involved in the community in gaining support and sharing ideas with stakeholders and further gathering of information made by the school to improve its educational programs. Since culture is part of their belief and tradition, students should be given time in valuing their history and traditions and acknowledging their importance. Although there is a conflict between some of these practices and the concepts of the science, as teachers, we are in the middle to link what would be the concepts or what would be the idea that should be believed or trusted by the students. So more studies are needed for the deeper understanding of students' culture and its relationships, schools, classrooms, and community activities. So this is my references, and thank you very much. That's it, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Apple, for such an insightful sharing of your research. To reintroduce our second panelist, let us welcome back Ms. Dailene M. Enriquez.
Thank you so much, sir. And I'm sorry for the connection loss. The weather is not action ethnography happened when the researcher immersed herself in the lives of the Ati, observed the daily routines, went to the forest to search for any wild, and observed their funds of knowledge, the in-depth interviews, and the focus group discussions. Narrative analysis was employed in the data analysis of the study. Based on the methodology, these are the results and discussion. It was divided into two parts. The first part is the narrative of the ATI participants in school. They experience unpleasant experiences in school, and they're subject to discrimination, and they cannot cross the border of science education in the standard school. And the reasons why ATI children stop schooling were they're being bullied in school for being dark-skinned, they lack financial and moral support, they lack the follow-ups at home, and they have no permanency of residence, and they tend to stop schooling and got married at an early age, and they're still at the marginalized sector of our society. The second part of the result and discussion were the celebration of the liberatory pedagogy in a place-based education. ATI elders have rich funds of knowledge and usually got their source of food from the mountainous forest of Maasin. They were experts in climbing and invading the forest to get their source of living. Their first funds of knowledge here was the pagpangalis sangkayos or digging of intoxicating yam. This ATI elder can elaborate. Yes,
Excuse me,
sir.
are you sharing the PowerPoint? We could not see it, or are you Or ano, baka
I'm
pwede
sharing
ko
it, sir.
i-share.
I'm sharing
Okay,
it.
paki-share ikaw. Ano ba?
Okay.
Screen
Okay, I will
share.
share again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Handa. Please proceed, Ms. Dailin.
Or baka low signal ikaw dyan. Would you like me to share your ano? Can you see Noel?
Sir?
Okay siya. Okay.
Okay. I will continue to the second part of the results and discussion.
Okay, good.
You may go on pa, Ms. Dailin.
These elders have rich funds of knowledge, and they usually got their source of food from the mountainous forest of Maasin. They were expert in climbing and invading the forest to get their source of living. The first funds of knowledge here was the pagpangaris ng kayos, or digging of intoxicating yam. This ati elder can elaborately explain how to properly dig this poisonous root crop, because this, if not taken properly and if touched, it may cause itchiness and even it may cause death. According to this ati, they use this root crop as rodenticides or pesticides to any crops. Among the thousands of twining vines in the forest, they can pinpoint the cayos plant. They can explain correctly the characteristics and life cycle of this yam. Without their knowledge, what they were talking and explaining were the concepts and these are points of knowledge. These explain may affect humans and animals' nervous system. Ate elder can explain the importance of washing, peeling, slicing, drying, and soaking these concepts on diffusion, drying, and permeability. There are also in making herbal medicines. They can pinpoint in the forest the plants used for the knowledge and smell. These happy children can climb and make broomsticks out of hibiscus plant very quickly, and when asked the propagated, they can explain.
Good morning po, Dr. Handa. Ayan po. Miss Dailin. Siguro po, I think technical difficulty lang since si Miss Dailin is in a remote area. So we are requesting Dr. Handa to share the PowerPoint of Miss Dailin so she can conserve her bandwidth. So let's just wait for Miss Dailin to come back.
She can close her camera too, so she could save on data, and the bandwidth would be much better.
Miss Dailin? When we resume po, we are requesting Dr. Handa to share your PowerPoint so you can reserve your bandwidth.
Nandyan pa si Dailin? Wala na?
Nandyan po siya,
I think
sir.
her signal is...
Yes po.
Her signal is not good.
Nawawala
so
po
I can
siya.
share for her sana the presentation and then, sige. I'll share and then probably from there, she can pick up later on for the discussion. I think she can share this better because she's the one who conducted the study. But anyway, she was presenting the results on her idea of liberatory pedagogy, and we will push that idea later on. Because if you've noticed in here, the context of this study was outside the school setting. So in other words, the learning really took place in the context or in the place where the Ati children are living, and of course, very natural to their local environment. So what you saw in her study was very common cultural practice was the pangalis ang kayos, or in other words, the digging of this tuber. And it so happened this tuber is very intoxicating, but this serves as a food for the atis, most especially during summer. And so from there, in the interviews of Daidin, she was able to find out that the atis have really rich funds of knowledge and know a lot, plenty of knowledge associated to this caius or this kind of this caius or tuber. And then from the ati, was even the younger generation were able to share to Dailin ideas on the life cycle of the cayos, okay? And cayos or intoxicating yam contains poisonous substance that may affect human or animal nervous system. They know already that cayos is very dangerous, but it so happened that through their life experiences, they were able to find ways to remove the poison in the tuber, and this kind of knowledge system has been transmitted to generations. Okay, and students learn this naturally from their elders, from the people in the community. They don't have to go through formal schooling. So Dailin was able to experience and saw for herself how the cayus is being processed, like how it is washed, peeled, sliced, dried, and soaked in the water. In order to remove the poison from the cayus, I think the the cayus is placed in either in the sack or in a mesh bag, and then it is submerged in a running water in the river or sapa or tributary in the mountains, and then allow it to stay there for a longer time. And you know the ati has ways to know if there is still poison in the cayus. Like for example, if there are small fish already starting biting the sap where the cayus is in while submerged in the water, that's already a sign that probably there is no more poison in the yam. And so these are knowledge system that are available in the community, and this or this ati children know this at a very young age. And from her perspective, from Dailin, although of course the Ati were not aware that there's so much science in their practices, Dailin from her end was also interpreting the science that she found in this process, and she mentioned she identified diffusion, drying, and permeability as science concepts that are parallel to the practice that she found in the community. Okay. She also learned how the herbal medicines are being processed and produced in the community, and these are funds of knowledge that are readily available to the students, that are easily transmitted to the students by the elders in a very natural way. And it seems like the way these children are being educated are very much different from the kind of quote unquote forced way of learning that are usually typical in our classroom setting. But here, if you've noticed in this research, learning is very natural. It's not as difficult as usually we do when we teach students in our school, but this is very natural because they were able to observe this, the way their elders prepare, for example, herbal medicines. And again, these atis or these indigenous people did not identify or did not coin the term drying and sterilization, because these are the concepts that that are in the mind of Dailin while observing. But what she's trying to say here is that there are parallel concepts in the worldview of the Ati that are also similar to that of science. But it so happened that this drying, sterilization are foreign infused terms that she is using to or trying to frame the understanding of the Ati. But in reality, even without these terms, still the Ati will be able to live naturally and will be able to make use of the body of knowledge in order for them to live and to transfer this knowledge to the students. In other words, we can see here two parallel views. The science views that being held by Dailin and that of the views of the worldviews of the Ati. And just as parallelism in them, however, of course, we do not expect the Ati to use the scientific terms that we are using in the classroom or when we teach science. Another cultural practice in the community is the making of broomstick out of hibiok plant. So again, from the community people, from the Ati, she was able to draw a body of knowledge that describe the life cycle of the hibiok, or it's a palm plant. It's a diploid dozoochory process of plants and poop repopulation or hibiok palm dispersal in the forest through bowels of both prey and predator. So ito naman ang scientific way of explaining ni Dailin na take note, hindi niya ito shinare sa community. She would like the worldview, the understanding, the body of knowledge to be on themselves and can stand on its own in the community. Ito ay sa kanyang personal na meaning making of attempting to connect what she saw and what she observed in the community in science. Okay? So I hope that's clear na hindi niya pinersa itong mga terms na ito. Ito is a way of saying na may mga parallel terms sa science na nakikita niya sa local practices ng community. In other words, what you saw is science actually being practiced and being labeled in the local terms of the local people. Okay. So paghimo sang buon-buon, I think this is what do you call pouch? It's a pouch made from nito vine plant for durability. So nakita ninyo we have so plenty of body of knowledge and plenty of products. And from Dailin's view, she was able to see that there is science in the community, not necessarily labeled in the terms that we have learned in school, but what she saw was a science in practice in the community. So this is her conclusion. Through celebrating liberatory pedagogy where science education is relevant to them, because they can relate in the language of science, hence the margin and center dichotomy collapse or break. They are not put at the margin anymore. Instead, they are now positioned at the center while learning their own practices, especially their funds of knowledge. They can explain and elaborate their funds of knowledge in detail without noticing that they were already talking a science concept. They should not be labeled as empty-brained or dull because when we explore what is relevant to them, they are experts. So ang ibig sabihin dito ni Daily na may science sa community. Kaso lang ibang terms at ibang lingwahe ang ginagamit nila. In terms of mayroong validity naman, intergenerational validity, at gusto niyang emphasize dito ang idea ng margin at center. Kasi sa school, kapag tinuturo ang science sa mga ate, of course, the ate children are placed at the margin kasi what is being taught to them, the language, the concepts of science are too foreign to them. So that's why it's very difficult for them to learn science because iba ang kanilang pinanggalingan, iba ang kultura at ibang terms ang ginagamit nila. So that's why when they learn science in school, we are expecting that these ate children are placed on the margins. So gusto ipakita dito ni Dailin ang idea na kapag ang isang estudyante na atin na galing sa indigenous community, kapag ginagamit ang kanyang lingwahe, kapag ginagamit ang kaniyang kultura, kapag ginagamit ang body of knowledge na kinuha niya sa kanilang mga ancestors, na ipinasa sa kanila in a natural way, hindi sila bobo. They are very intelligent people. They know a lot about science, although not labeled as science by them, but that's part of their ways of knowing and ways of living. But unfortunately, when we use science terms to teach them, they have difficulty understanding it. So that's why ang major point dito ni Dailin is kapag tinuturo ang kultura ng mga estudyante, lalo na may related siya sa science at ginagamit ang kanilang lingwahe, dito hindi na ang mga estudyante nakaposisyon na nasa margin. Typical in a science classroom when they go to school, nasa margin ang kanilang position. Pero dito sa natural community, sa kanilang community, hindi na nila kailangan i-navigate ang sinasabing margin at center. Dahil dito sa kanilang community, they are already placed at the center. So that's why sinasabi niyang na-collapse na ang certain and margin dichotomy na isang problema sa traditional classroom natin, most especially in teaching the indigenous children coming from indigenous communities. So kapag ituro ito sa kanilang lingwahe, ituro using their knowledge, na rich naman in science at parallel naman sa konsepto ng science, ang mga bata ay naging sentro ng edukasyon, hindi na sila nasa margin. At ito talaga ang pinakamataas na level ng indigenization and culture-based education na pwede nating ituro sa mga estudyante, lalo na if they're coming from the indigenous communities. Okay. Okay. So impact. After the conduct of my research paper, these ATE participants were already the recipients of donations from any organizations or locality like church, gift-giving activities to the people around, and they were given privileges by the government like IPs. They were the top beneficiary of any subsidies from the local government unit. Even the IPs in the region visited them and acknowledged their existence. However, these are only seasonal and cannot sustain their everyday living. That is why I strongly recommend agencies above to act on this young group. Kasi this kind of thing, in the sinasabi sa charity approach, ibigay mo lang, it's not a sustainable way of perpetuating or helping this indigenous community. I think we should do something else other than that. Charity approach will even more perpetuate the status quo and will place the position of the as simply receivers of help, and that I think in the long run would still not be good for the community. So this is Dailin's insight. For almost a year of being with them, they were not just my participants of the study. The simplicity and humility in their life deeply captured my heart. They wholeheartedly welcomed me in their humble home. They showed me their sincere smiles and open hearts every time I come to their place. I had so many realizations every time I leave their place. I felt I have so much. I felt at peace and felt important. I don't know, maybe I'm always looking for more. And here comes these people whose only wish is to have rice to eat in a day, no dreams at all but to survive in a day. Sometimes what is trash to us is treasure to us. But these groups of people are part and parcel of society where we belong. Like us, they also need attention. They deserve the same opportunity as us. It is always a call. So ito ang mga sinasabi nating auto-ethnography, personal insights ni Dailin sa kanyang study. Okay. So that's it.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Dr. Handa.
I did justice
Thank you so much.
Study. Matagal na ito kasi medyo nalimutan ko na ang ibang content. But anyway, at least we were able to show you the different levels of help of indigenizing, localizing. Yung isa, yung nasa formal schooling, gamitin mo ang kanilang funds of knowledge at i-connect ang national curriculum sa funds of knowledge ng community. Okay, and that is what exactly Apple did in her paper. But in Dylan's paper, it went to a deeper and higher level of indigenization, this time disregarding the national curriculum, focusing only on the body of knowledge that they have and celebrate it. And Dylan was able to learn that it's so rich. They have science in them. They don't call it science, but then when they and those are being taught naturally, and we use this such kinds of body of knowledge, the students now are positioned at the center. They don't have to navigate the center margin dichotomy, and that I think is a very interesting contribution in understanding culture-based education this study. Thank you.
Thank you po, Dr. Handa, for presenting on behalf of Miss Dailene. Well, welcome to the new normal. Kumbaga pa sa show, the show must go. Kumbaga sa mga production, the show must go on.
Yeah.
Before we proceed to our open forum, may I request everyone to take a deep breath muna. Hinga tayo. Inhale, exhale. Thank you. That was enriching, lahat po ng presentations. Ang sarap lang matuto sa mga research na to, from the result, the outcomes from the researchers are very significant, very inspiring. Alam ko yung iba nagmumuni-muni na kung ano mga questions. Anong tanong nila. I think some have realizations as well. So may I call back Miss Apple Almirante, and if Miss Dailene can open at least her audio.
Nandiyan si Dailene. Dailene, can you open your please?
The open forum.
Okay, good. I already presented the latter part. I hope I did justice to your paper. Medyo nalimutan ko na rin. I think that was about 2 years or 1 year ago na eh. Okay.
Now,
but
everyone,
I hope I did justice.
Yes, well,
very nice, sir.
So everyone, the virtual space is now open for the question and answer portion. Do we have here questions?
If I may start, I'd like to direct this question to Dr. Handa. Doc, ang ganda po ng mga ginagawa niyo for the cultural education. No? So aside from Durungawan, how can teachers access all of these researches and lesson exemplars so that they can also learn from them? Kasi very, very rich. Just listening to just two pa lang, it's so enriching and so mind-opening to me. So how else can we find more of this, or where else can we find more of this po?
Yeah. So advocacy namin ito sa teacher education, but you see, seeing our students conducting studies like this, I'm just so happy that they also share the same kind of passion that we have for culture-based education. And it so happened that I'm in science teacher education. Of course, these disciples that we have on research are exploring on connecting science to the culture of the students. And I'm very happy that Apple and Dailene were able to join with me and ride them in the boat in our goal to make a culturally relevant science education to Filipinos. I think Rob is raising his hand.
Okay, Dean Rob.
Good morning.
Yes,
Rob.
Rob.
Sir, this is more of like a question and some consultations. As you see on my background, this class, or the class that we are presenting in, is the Professional Diploma in Advanced Studies of Culture and the Arts. We have been approached by Artists Welfare Project Incorporated about their project or plan to put up a master's program for artists. Okay, so the master's program, this is an advanced study, so it's leading to a master's in Philippine Heritage, Culture, and Arts Education program. It's still an application. Ames is a maritime school, but as we know, maritime is part of heritage and culture in the Philippines. And um, the reason is that a lot of people are asking, why in the maritime school? Why is there a culture and arts in the maritime school? So our president is very dynamic enough to put up a museum in the maritime school, and also a culture and arts program for a maritime school, and a performing arts program for a maritime school. We are planning to put a Bachelor of Culture and Arts Education. What would for the undergrad program to complement this master's program from ALPI? So, what would be your recommendations and suggestions in pursuing this? Thank you very much.
So I think it's a curriculum. You're talking now of a curriculum, Rob.
Yeah,
A
CMO
curriculum.
82.
And I think the better agencies for that could help you better either PSEC or CHED. Kasi undergraduate education ito, and our undergraduate education and even master's and PhD level education are being governed under the CHED. So siguro PSEP also can help because they have also their diploma, and then they are also tying schools with other schools. On our end at the NCC Ed, for example, probably if you need some of our help, and it can help you connecting with other people as well. What specific help do you need? For example, the curriculum. As far as curriculum is concerned, there is already, I think, a CHED standard for that. I think there's a memorandum coming from CHED that specifies, and that all you have to do is simply probably follow it or revise some of it and then seek approval. That's it. But what else? What else do you specifically would you like to ask for help? So that at least
Yeah,
in a way I
assistance
can also
in having
find
a
the
program.
people at NCCA and in my network to help you.
Yes, sir.
Medyo choppy ka, Rob. Hindi ko ma-pick up yung ibang ano mo, yung other things that you said. I don't know if it might be my signal or in yours.
I'll speak to the mic. Am I clear now?
Yeah. Okay na.
Yeah. This advanced studies program was a master's program proposed by the Artist Welfare Project. So they were searching for a academic institution to pilot the program for them, because they believe that artists needs further education. And
I see.
okay, so the title they proposed was Masters in Philippine Heritage, Culture and Arts Education, and because of this one, it also impressed upon me to pursue offering or applying for a program of Bachelor in Culture and Arts Education. And with your insights of seeking assistance from PSEP, where I was one of the teachers in the GDTA. For
Commissioner
SPH.
Darilag is very supportive. Commissioner Darilag Aldrin is also a PSEP and NCCA supporter, and he's a commissioner in CHED. I think these are one of the key people that you can ask help as far as the curriculum is concerned, because these are being governed by certain standards by CHED. CHED is the major controlling body as far as the curriculum for the undergraduate and graduate programs in the country. And I understand there are already templates for the curriculum, and usually the school pwede din silang mag-revise. There's what we call school-based curriculum making workshop that you can possibly do if you wish to not to adapt, or what I mean not to adapt because it's prescriptive but there are some usually some subjects that pwede ninyong idagdag kasi usually sa CHED minimum yan this is the minimum subjects that in a particular program na binibigay kaya either you can add, or what sometimes we do is we do some kind of a tweaking, or there are also some subjects na may elective, mga ganun ba. Pero ang mga minimum standard na require ng CHED, you have to follow that. And if you would like to enrich it, pwede yung dagdagan, or may mga kaunting modification. But as far as our policies and the curriculum, all of these are being dictated by the Commission on Higher Education. Kahit ang NCCA medyo walang have little to say about this. It's the CHED that determines the curriculum both and approves the curriculum both in the undergraduate and graduate level program.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. We'll get in touch with NCC Ed once we have already designed the program and get your insights on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
General.
Probably what we can do is we'll get the CHED and template, and from there mayroon kayong we call it curriculum review in the university. Magko-curriculum review kung ano dito ang pwedeng i-tweak at anong idagdag sa if you would like your curriculum to be more competitive than other programs in the country. Ipapackage niyo siya na maging competitive siya, may something different or may new take kayo sa standard na binibigay ng CHED, I think that will make your curriculum more attractive. So it requires, I think, a curriculum, ang term dyan ay curriculum review. And you invite some experts to chip in ideas sa inyong curriculum review. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir.
Sige, Sir Rob. Thank you,
Sir Rob. We have the question in the chat box. It's from Rocky Nicor. He said that he asked, since we are talking about culture-based education, do you think that the mother tongue subject was successful or effective when it only utilizes the dominant language of the province? It goes to everyone.
Wow, this is an interesting question kasi don't you know that there is now, I don't know kung nagawa na, pero may mga hearings sa Congress. And I remember si Representative Mark Go yata ang nag-initiate questioning the use of mother tongue right now kasi they are proposing a bill to do something about it because of it seems what the Congress is trying to say is lack of success of mother tongue. Actually, when I was invited to that congressional hearing representing NCCA, I really expressed an idea that I do not kasi as far as mother tongue is concerned, theoretically, philosophically, it's really very sound as far as theories of education, philosophy of education is concerned. So I expressed an idea na sabi ko, there might be some kind of medyo may kailangan talaga lang. So you have to rethink on how it is implemented in the field. Kasi ang express this idea na sabi ko, in the field kasi ang intention talaga, ang idea ng mother tongue is madaling maintindihan ng isang estudyante ang isang topiko if this is taught in their mother tongue kasi hindi na siya mag-navigate ng certain layer na intindihin pa niya dahil ibang lengguwahe ang kanyang gagamitin. So basically, kung ano ang lengguwahe mo sa bahay, yan ang iyong springboard to teach certain topics. Sa basic level lang naman ito sa ilalim, di ba, ng elementary education. Kasi ang idea niyan that you have to master first what you have and then expand a little bit. Kaso lang, ang na-notice ko kasi sa mother tongue, parang ginawang canned program na parang ni-uniform siya in a regional level. Alam mo naman, as far as textbook production is concerned, there is a commercial intention on that. Kung madami ang magbili ng textbook na ito, it's more commercially viable. So ganyan minsan, kasi sa region, for example, isa ang ginagamit ng mother tongue. Like in Western Visayas, we know that we have Kinaraya in Antique, we have Akyanon in Aklan, we have also Hilagay noon, and in each town, for example, in Iloilo, there are variations in the mother tongue. So kung gawin mo siyang isang regional language lang, sometimes it favors one group over the other. And so that's why if you teach that kind of mother tongue, for example, to Akinaray or Akyanon speaking students, they are so confused instead of adding instead of helping the students to understand, you are introducing a new language that is foreign to them, which I find very contrary to the theory and the principle why we have mother tongue. So for example, if the students are in the city, and it so happened that at home, which is a rich school, actually ito ang problema siguro kung bakit ni-propose ito, kasi parang elitist ang approach ni Representative Go during the hearing. So parang they are pushing for that kasi ang kanilang for example, sa school kasi ang mga elite na mga estudyante, nahirapan sila sa mother tongue, to understand the mother tongue, kasi sa bahay nila English ang ginagamit nila, or a combination of English, for example, and another local language. Of course, kapag ituro ang isang regional language na iba naman sa language na in-speak ng isang bata sa bahay nila, naturally, what would you expect instead of achieving the goal of making the lessons more understandable and accessible to the life of the students? Pinahirapan mo pa ang estudyante. Siguro ang kulang sa pag-intindi ng mga teachers. Ang teachers at as much as possible, try to not to make the mother tongue uniform o isang mother tongue, kasi problematic ito. Dahil sana kung ituro ang mother tongue, gamitin mo ang lingwahe ng estudyante na comfortably sila. So papasok dito ang sinasabi ko kaninang multiculturalism. If you're going to teach mother tongue in the city where some of your students are speaking English, so in other words, some of the English language now become parts of the mother tongue and use that to teach the children in the lower level in the elementary school. Pero kung lagyan mo siya ng mga term na ginawa ng region, for example, even the color, even the names of the numbers, for example. So they're surprised because that's not part of what they use at home. So pag sinabi mo 1, 2, 3, 4 to an elite group, that's their mother tongue. When you call that on other names or color like blue or yellow, for example, tawagin mong kanaryo, that's in Iloilo, and nagulat ang estudyante because they do not know what Canario is. Why? Because that's not of their part of their mother tongue. So the basic principle to be of mother tongue is use the language of the students. So kung nagtuturo ka sa teacher in a classroom, alamin mo ang kanilang kultura at saka mag-multiculturalism kasi yung classroom na konsepto. Huwag mong i-uniform sa pagturo ng mother tongue, kasi if that would be the case, we are adding more confusions instead of enacting the very intention of that Republic Act. Actually, I said that in the Congress, but it seems like Representative Marco is really wanting to remove this mother tongue. I do not know what happened. Hindi nila ako pinatawag. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Handa. Miss Apple and Miss Dailin, would you like to add? Or okay. Would you like to share something? Or
Actually, sir, I agree with the statement or the idea of Dr. Handa, because we have different local language, especially in our home, so we cannot implement one mother tongue to the students. So based on my experience also, niya, yung mga nagtatanong ng mga bata sa mga teachers na nanay nila, they don't understand what it's all about. So even the teachers don't know what is the meaning of that because they are not also familiar with that. So how can they are going to teach the mother tongue if the teacher also is not really familiar with that language? It's
Okay. Thank you. I hope, Rocky, that answers your question. You also, well, there are more questions coming in. I think the audiences are warming up already. So the next question is from Miss Lani Ligot. How are we implementing or integrating the culture-based education in our K to 12 curriculum or arts track? Are we aligned or being supported by the DepEd? So that's two questions. Who would like to answer from our panel?
I'll answer that.
Okay.
Ang national standard natin is situated in a Republic Act. It is mandated. It's in na ngayon milks is ano ba ang milk apple minimum
most essential learning
competencies ngayon sa time of the pandemic. Now, these are non-negotiable concepts or competencies na mandated from the government, from the top, from the Department of Education. So, dapat lahat ito tuturo all over the country kasi ito ay mandated. Hindi pwedeng bawasan natin yan. Pwede lang dagdagan. So, that's why in the milks, you can add more, but you cannot under-implement it kasi this is for every Filipinos to learn. Pero ang ibig sabihin natin dito sa culture-based education ay paano mo yan maturo ang milk, okay, sa konteksto ng iyong estudyante. For example, in the local setting. For example, in an indigenous community. For example, localization, indigenization in a local community. Okay. So now, how are you going to connect the milks? Because those are concepts. How would you connect that to the life worlds of the students so that these concepts will become more real to them? Para mas ma-learn nila better ang konsepto. And this requires creativity, patient, pag-isipan ito ng estudyante. Because ng teacher, kasi sometimes we would like to uniform our teaching practices eh. The same lesson plan, pare-pareho ang paggawa, mga ganun ba? Ito ay we would like to encourage, most especially in our Durungawan projects at NCCA, na kung paano ito i-enact ng isang teacher sa kanyang school na maturo ang konsepto using the local culture, using the context in the community, or the funds of knowledge where the students are coming from are being used or you do something to bridge the milk and that of the culture of your students. And I think we can implement a better culture-based education curriculum. Pero some teachers sometimes kasi what they do is mga ready-made lesson plan na nagawa na ba? At saka minsan ginagawa nating universal at uniform ang curriculum eh. Kasi ang concepts kasi pareho yan. Pero you can see that in your local setting kung paano ang connection is very important. So that's why this is what we encourage if we would like to make our curriculum more culture-based. So if you are teaching, for example, the arts track, and of course, there is already a prescription from DepEd kung anong mga competencies dyan. All you have to do is, how could I teach this given that these are my students? So that's why very important here is to know your students, to know the community where you are teaching, to know the neighborhoods where they are coming from, and use those lugar, practices na pwedeng maipasok. And I think si Apple kanina, she did that. Although napakalayo na kung isipin natin ang babayla na funds of knowledge, pero she did some ways to connect. Okay? Because mayroon namang science as presented by Dailin kanina, Merong science sa community, kaso lang, iba ang lingwahe na ginagamit natin. But it so happened that in culture-based education na ito, lalo na favoring the national curriculum, so nandyan ang standards. Gamitin na lang natin yan ay connect sa local culture ng mga kabataan. And we will be using the cultural capitals of the students as something that would help and aid you in learning instead of being like a hindrance to their achievement. Kasi may mga teorya noon na sinasabi nila, cultural deficit model in understanding education. Magsabi tayo na, ay, ano yan kasi galing sila, mababa ang kanilang score kasi ganyan. We'd like to debunk such kind of theory because in culture-based education, we'd like to value the culture where our students are coming from, that they would love and appreciate their culture. And you can teach certain concepts either in science or in math or in the arts, lalo na sa arts, my goodness, lalo na sa arts, lalo na in all subjects. There are always ways by which we can connect the culture and the national competencies. And that's something that we're working for at the National Committee on Cultural Education. Okay, thank you.
Thank you po, Dr. Randa. Ms. Apple, would you like to add? Or you're good with it?
Oh, sir.
Okay, thank you. Before we proceed to our last two questions, may I request everyone to please turn on your cameras so we can see your faces, reactions. Alam ko po na November na, pero wag po tayo lapida pong haharapin natin ngayon. So it's really nice if we can get to see each other. Thank you for opening your cameras. Okay. So thank you. For our second to the last question, it's from Miss Carla Victoria Villegas. So sabi niya, magandang araw po. Address din po ito sa lahat ng panelists. In terms po of contextualization, localization, and cultural dissemination, aside po from utilizing your research study on your respective school, are there plans or steps for this to be integrated also to your division level curriculum? Ms. Apple, would you like to start?
I guess, sir, it depends because the concepts or the funds of knowledge, it doesn't mean it is the same with the same community. So the concepts of contextualization, it will varies in the different communities. So yung halimbawa po yung sa akin about the Babaylan, I cannot, I think the process I can share that. But the concepts, of course, maybe that practices or that belief from Kalinog is different from Niniway or Lambunaw. So I cannot really say that the concepts or the idea or the practices, I can say that it is the same also with the other municipality. But of course, the process of contextualization as a whole, sir, I can share that. That's it, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Anda, would you like to answer that question as well?
Okay. What we are doing right now, because it's a research-based, and alam mo naman ang research, matagal ito ma-pick up kasi new ideas are being introduced when you are conducting research. So hopefully what we are doing, magiging part ito ng how would I say it, magkumpul-kumpul siya. Okay? Kasi ang ginagawa namin actually sometimes, hindi mo ito ma-implement na in all division, di ba? Kasi sabi natin iba-iba ang community, but what we are sharing to you is the model on how to do it. So that teachers, what you're going to do, dapat talaga pag-aralan nila ang kanilang community, and this will involve some kind of a research and research skills also, kahit formal or informal man, na on how to be able to draw the community funds of knowledge and the culture of the community and how to understand the culture of the students. Kasi ang aming aim actually is not really to make this lesson plan uniform to everybody. Of course not. It's the process. It's how we do it that we would like to share. And we have done in research and hopefully others will follow it. Kasi alam niyo naman kapag sinasabi nating research, hindi ito madaling maging part ng mainstream. Lalo na that we are not advocating that the lesson plans that they made will be followed all throughout the division. That's not our intention. Simply to show to our, we would like to show to the teachers that it's possible to indigenize, localize, and to contextualize the national competencies in the culture of the students. And we hope that this kind of thinking will sink deeper to our teachers. Kasi hindi goal namin na gawin siyang canned program or canned lesson plan na i-apply ng iba. That is not. It's more of how to make it, and they can do the same in their respective schools. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Handa. For our last question, may I call on Sir Christian Aralbondo?
Hi, sir. I think my question a while ago is being answered a while ago, but I would like to know po if the research that you have conducted po is right now being applied by different cultural communities, or are there any tawag po dito parang nasundan po ba yung research ninyo with other cultural minorities and communities? Thank you po.
I think there are already. There are still many more. Ngayon may bago akong student this time. Ang kanina naman ay yung farming community. So gusto niya naman na mag-document ng farming community, certain aspects in there, and make lesson plans out of it dahil nagtuturo sa isang farming community. Merong may estudyante din ako na nasa fishing village sila. So ganun yung ginagawa nila. Okay. So if it's more of a very unique indigenous community, kasi sa Iloilo, ang aming may indigenous communities are like the Ati, as mentioned kanina as presented by Dailin, and our Panay Bukidnon, di ba? Apple, yung mga babayla natin belongs to the Panay Bukidnon because Kalinog, Iloilo is the home of Panay Bukidnon's IPs in Panay. Okay. So as far as follow-up research, we have been doing that. So kung akong advisor nila, napipiliin, in-encourage ko talaga mga estudyante ko, okay, you do research on the anthropology and sociology of science education kasi yan ang aking field. I don't want to get out from that field. If your research is on other field, you seek for another advisor. So kung sa akin sila pupunta, most likely sinasabi ko na sa kanila na itong aking area of research. So if you're interested of that, then come in. If you have other research topic, punta kay ganito, pupunta ka sa kay kasi kanilang expertise yan. So kung sa aking fold sila, most likely I will influence them to really do a culture-based education research. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. I think madami-dami pa tayong kailangan malaman. I know madami pang questions, but because we have limited time, we have to end our open forum. But last na lang po for all the panelists. What is one of the most important insights in your line of work that you would like to leave or share to our audiences for today? Ms. Apple, would you want to start?
Okay, sir. So I guess, sir, as one of the product of the rural community wherein I grew up, I guess it's about, since this is all about the culture base, I think students and people are appreciative, and they need to embrace the culture. They need to preserve for the future generation also, and we need to be proud of the culture that we have. That's it, sir.
Thank you, Miss Apple. Miss Dailina, wala talaga, no? Yung, anyways, let's proceed.
Medyo mahina ang signal ni Dailin, so pasensya na po. Kasi alam niyo naman ang realities natin ngayon sa pandemic. But anyway, ang aking message, Noel, okay, to everybody, thank you so much for coming. My love for culture-based education, particularly on grounding teaching practices, possibly creating knowledge, body of knowledge through research, is always connected to my desire as an educator, a teacher educator, to connect, to make a culturally relevant education for all Filipinos. We have been influenced so much by our colonizers in the past, by the Spaniards, by the Americans, trying to dictate and shape what is Filipino culture and how it is taught to us. And I think it's high time that we have to not I'm saying that those are bad influences, okay? Because mahabang usapan yan. Pero ang ibig ko lang sabihin dito ay I think we have to rethink. I think we have to rethink and examine our position in this country. I think there is a need for us to dig deeper into our roots and learn more about ourselves and then connect education in there. Marami pang dapat gawin, marami pang dapat malaman, marami pang pwedeng gawin in the future. We are pushing an advocacy on how to make any subject in the country, the teaching of those relevant to the lives of our students. And culture-based education as a framework is very huge. Hindi lang ito science ed, hindi lang mathematics education, in all subjects. So lahat kayo pwede makapasok from elementary to high school to college. It's an advocacy where no one should be left behind. Everyone can pitch in and can join this advocacy in making our education relevant to the culture of the Filipinos. And that would require plenty of understanding and research of the Filipino culture to be transmitted to the next generation. So yun lang, and I'm very happy that you have a program for culture and the arts in the undergraduate and also for your plan for the master's level program. These are really good, great initiative because this is formal education. Kapag maging part na siya ng isang formal curriculum with a deep understanding of what we would like this curriculum to be and we would like to produce in the future in terms of intention, in terms of grounding philosophy, napakaganda. So I think siguro kailangan lang more of like more, how would I say it, inputs, more, kasi maganda siya. So ano ba ang pwedeng madagdag para but a start of putting up a curriculum, a formal program to prepare the graduates on the culture and the arts, especially in the education component and the master's program and cultural heritage. Those are curricular programs that are needed in the country. And by doing that, I think you're helping us as well at NCC, and we're helping the Filipino people in producing knowledge base and in creating an education that is, as I said, relevant to the Filipino people. And with that, I congratulate all of you, and even in putting up this webinar, my congratulations and thank you for inviting us. Good morning.
Thank you so much, Dr. Handa, Ms. Apple Almirante, and even though Ms. Dailin is not here, but her work are very much significant. Madami pang dapat at pwedeng gawin, but it should start somewhere. And I think and I believe that the sharing today have inspired most of us, I think all of us, to do our advocacy through research. And with that, I close the forum, and I'd like to turn back the program to our host, Ms. Tanya Lopez.
Maraming salamat, Noel. Maraming salamat again, to our keynote speaker and our panelists. Very informative, very insightful, and very encouraging for us listeners and audiences to pursue culture-based education. So we have a better understanding of what it is, how it can help, how valuable it is in terms of contribution to our educational system here in the Philippines, and how we can be really relevant to our students wherever we go, wherever we teach in the future. So at this point, I would like to call on the AIMS President, Dr. Arlene Awid Padaranga, and our program head, Dean Robert Hayden Jr., to virtually present our certificate of appreciation to our esteemed keynote speaker and panelists. May I request you to please open your Zoom cameras while I read our certificate. Our certificate reads, Asian Institute of Maritime Studies. With this certificate of appreciation is hereby awarded to the name of our speaker or panelists for sharing invaluable insight and expertise during the event Pamana ng Sining at Kultura, Culture and Arts Education in the Philippines, a two-part special webinar that provides a forum to experience and expand the intersections of practices in culture and arts education in the country. Given this 30th day of October in the year of our Lord 2021, in the JOA auditorium or online virtually in the Philippines. Signed, Robert F. Hayden Jr., MAFS, Dean, School of Heritage Education. Jennifer Lee Bonto, AWPI Executive Director. And Christopher P. Maambog, PhD, Dean, School of Graduate Studies. May I now call on the Program Chair of the Masters for Master in Philippine Culture, Heritage, and Arts Development, Robert F. Hayden Jr., for the message of thanks.
Good morning once again. On behalf of the administrative and academic officials of the Asian Institute of Maritime Studies, the School of Graduate Studies, I would like to thank our resource persons for this morning, Dr. Vicente Handa, Ms. Apple Almirante, and Ms. Daylen Enriquez, for graciously sharing their time and expertise in providing very much significant information on the research topics and on the forum or on the talk. This will be a very nice and a very influential educational experience, especially for our students in the Professional Diploma in Advanced Studies of Culture and the Arts. And I hope this will not be the first and last, but this will be one of, this will be the beginning of our partnership or our connection and our collaboration, being educators in culture and arts education in the country. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Dean Robert. So, this ends the first part of the Pamana ng Sining at Kultura, Culture and Arts Education of the Philippines webinar. We hope that you have gained insights and valuable learning on the culture and arts education, which can be very helpful in the development of your ideas or projects to propagate cultural education in your regions or line of work. If you are interested to learn more about cultural education, we invite you to watch Mga Durungawan sa Kulturang Pilipino, a webinar series on culture-based education, a project of the National Committee on Cultural Education headed by Dr. Vicente Handa. This is found in the NCCA Facebook page. We also invite you to join us in session 2 of this webinar next month on November 20, same time at 8 o'clock in the morning here on Zoom. As we close, allow me to end with a short summary of this morning's presentations that I learned so much. Understanding students' culture and natural environment and integrating lessons within their context and locality not only teaches them about their subjects, but more importantly, provides them with a deep appreciation and finding meaning in their cultural practices, knowledge systems, and identities. In turn, they are empowered by their ways of knowing, and these new learnings richly contribute to the preservation of our Filipino culture or Kamalayang Filipino. Maraming salamat po and have a nice weekend, everyone. Are we going to have a photo op? Sige. Yan. Smile. Please open your cams, everybody, so that we can have one photo op for everyone.
Then they have antelopes, swan, and the ancestral of antelopes and gazelles.
Can we have just the resource persons and the graduate school students plus Madam Arlene and the Ames people?
Okay, ready?